Hey, everybody, thanks for tuning in. I am doing take two of this intro because last time I recorded it, I did not have my microphone plugged in like a moron. So I tell you guys all the time, don't listen to me, listen to the people that I bring on. And I'm just a smooth brained pleb working my way through this thing we call Bitcoin. But, anyways, on this week's episode, I have Paul Malewitz. I probably butchered how you say the last name. Paul, so I apologize. But his Twitter handle is at Dadpressions. And we got connected a while ago. He had reached out. I think he heard me on somebody's podcast. And so we just started following each other. Happen to both be Michigan Wolverine fans, so that have that in common. But also, he's pretty funny and posts a lot of good content. And that's how he originally started his Twitter account was posting parenting jokes and jokes about being a dad, basically. So yeah, you should guys should give him a follow if you don't already follow him. But yeah, we just had a good pleb chat, talking about Bitcoin, everything that's going on in the Bitcoin space, blah 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 blah. And yeah, so I hope you guys enjoy it. We talk a little bit about Jpegs, but we just kind of talk about everything and get into his background and how he found Bitcoin originally. So as always, I want to shout out to the BitBox02 hardware wallet. Go to shiftcrypto.ch/Bitcoin made simple and get yourself a BitBox02 hardware wallet. Get 5% off. Use the promo code Bitcoin made simple, all one word. Also, shout out to Upstream Data. Go to upstreamdata.ca and you can check out all the products they have, like miners. But also, if you are looking at doing a mine at home, you're going to mine at home, you might want to get a black box, and you can get one there and it makes the sound go away. So I highly recommend it. Upstreamdata.ca. And then also, you guys know my streaming platform, Movies Plus. Go to mymoviesplus.com and you can check out all the content we have going on, lots of new originals and lots of just general content. And then we have also some Bitcoin content. And we have movies plus film festival going on in March. So you can be a part of it. Get the promo code Corey, Cory, and you will get 1 year for $24. So it's $2 a month, and you're helping support a pleb like me. So I appreciate you guys as always. If you want to reach out to me, you can email the show Bitcoin Made Simple podcast at gmail.com. I will talk to you guys later. Thanks. So here is
Nice.
that's how you know it's a dad pod, a Friday night dad pod.
Yeah,
Dude,
especially because we built it around your put kid to bedtime.
yep,
I
yep.
decided to let my kid roll. So like he's just in the other room going bonkers at this point, which
That's
is
awesome. How old is he?
he's 8.
Okay, mine's 7. My oldest is
Nice.
7. Um, yeah, I mean, I don't know. I can't, no matter what we do, the bedtime doesn't become a thing. It's always a disaster. And like, there'll be nights where like, put them to bed and like, I come down like 20 minutes later and my wife's like, whoa, what happened? I'm like, I don't know. And then like nights like tonight where I'm sitting there and like trying to get them, and I'm just like, close your eyes, close your eyes, just like stare at the wall, roll on that side. You usually fall asleep that way. It's just
Do you have
uh
like a set routine or is it just catch as catch can the whole time?
we tried the whole set routine. I mean, we tried like every single thing of like under the sun, because people were like, oh, try sleep training.
Mhm.
um and the first, like with our oldest, we tried that for a little bit, but then we were weak and we had only had
Yeah.
one kid at that time. So we're like, yeah, what the heck, and like he'd crawl in our bed, whatever, no big deal. The second one, we are like, all right, we're gonna sleep train him. We learned our lesson, and he would cry for like he'd not like cry, but like literally be like yelling for us.
And
And
then you have a heart too. So
yeah, exactly. So you're just like,
my
and he would yell
emotions.
for like, we would initially go in, and then the one night I was playing Call of Duty with my friends, and I had the monitor still. And like after like 2 hours of him like calling for me, like my one friend who has kids around the same age, he was like, dude, I don't know how you do this. Like he's like, I don't know what in the world. Like we sleep trained and it was like 10 minutes of crying and then they were done. Um so I always joke, I say, we were blessed with wonderful children that don't know how to sleep. It's
Consistency is a good thing.
yeah,
Mine is like I've got him on a routine now. It's like I make him read to me, I read to him. Sometimes I read him propaganda of whatever I want him to know,
yeah, yeah.
like some like kid philosophy book, and then he usually goes to bed. But that's pretty lucky.
What kind of propaganda? Just like
Um,
history stuff or
I found some. Actually, he's super into a book about World War One right now, which
oh, that's awesome.
I don't know why, but that's not really. That's just his choice. I found some kid book where it takes like Roman philosophers and various other great works and sort of boils it down to like a page or two, and it's just like deep thoughts for kids, and that's
Yeah.
really cool. Or sometimes I'll read him like Aesop's fables and stuff like that, and I'll try to talk about it and stuff.
Oh, that's
That's
awesome.
like the one time of the day that I'm like, you're doing a really good job of being a parent. And the rest of the time, I'm just like trying to get work done. And I'm just like, oh my God,
I
it really
know.
needs.
Like, do you ever watch the show The Middle?
Yeah.
Well, me and my wife watch it because we're like that makes us feel like we're not alone in this like parenting thing. Because you're like most of the day you just feel like I don't know how this is happening. I feel like the worst. Like I feel like I'm terrible. Like getting making making lunch in the morning for school is like hands down my least favorite thing in the world. Like it is the
Oh,
bane of my existence because I'm like half awake and I'm just standing there at the island, like staring. And like I open the refrigerator and I just stare and I'm like, okay, do I give him PBJ? Oh no, she's gonna be mad if I give him a PBJ again. I gave him a PBJ yesterday. I can't do that. It's like I'm like weighing all these different decisions, and then also they're picky eaters. So I'm like, well, because I thought, well, he's a picky eater, but I'm gonna just throw it in his lunch, and he's hungry. He's gonna eat it, and I'm not there, and the parents are out of the room. Like he's at the cafeteria at school, so he's just gonna eat it. But if we pack stuff that he is like picky about, he will just come home
oh
and like
yeah.
his
Everything you
lunchbox is
give,
full.
it's like a portfolio of risk. Is the
Yeah.
wife going to be upset? Is the kid gonna, I get it.
Yeah, yeah. It's like, you're trying to like thread that needle of like, something that the kid will eat that also is something that your wife will be okay with you packing for
Right.
them. And then yeah, so and then it's also did you ever think about like how many decisions as a parent you have to make before like you start your workday?
Oh yeah, it's ridiculous. We my son's on the spectrum so that he likes routine. So like we
Mm.
try to routinize things, but what we get from that is if anything goes off the routine, like when I pick him up and take him home, it's just the grievances of the day. Like he's basically like George Costanza's dad. And he's like,
Oh,
they
that
gave me a different seat in music class. He's like, oh, there's a kid. He brings in a dime every day and he put it down. He's going to lose it. And he's just like, what?
that's awesome
He
though.
told me the kid left the dime in the road. And he's like, and then he went to get it. And luckily he survived. I'm like, oh, I'm glad he made it.
Man, that was a close one.
Yeah, touch and go.
That's
But
so
yeah, like
funny.
I think it's good though, because like if you're questioning yourself, if you're good at being a parent, it's much better than if you're just like, oh yeah, I'm really good. Like I used to do when I did stand up, it was like the comics that were like, oh, I'm really funny. Like I'm
Yeah.
super. It was just like no, and I'm sure like sports is a little bit different because there's sort of proof of work, but like it's like the kid that comes to the tryouts is like, I'm totally going to make this team. It's like, usually you don't need to say that out loud if that is what is true.
Yeah, you
So,
let your wrist shot do the talking and everybody
yeah.
goes, "Oh, okay." But yeah, no, I I wish I would have known whenever I like did some comedy and stuff in the past. I was terrified because I thought nobody bombed. Like
Oh
I
no.
didn't realize that like comedians bomb all the time. Like like the the best comedians in the world bomb like regularly and so I was like terrified of that and I didn't know that element of it. Um so I played it like really safe and I never got into like what I could do. So like I even tell my wife now, I have all these notes where I'm always like, if I ever want to, I could just turn it on and become a stand-up comedian. I mean, I would have like it would take a lot of work, don't get me wrong, and
Right.
like I'd have to get back into the swing of it. But I have all the ideas there, and she's like, "It's probably good for our marriage that you aren't a stand-up comedian."
She's like, yeah, I don't like that as your backup plan.
Yeah, she's like, I was
Business
hoping
should go well.
I was hoping for something a little more solid, but yeah, it's just like the amount of things that the material that comes from being a parent, where you're like, you know, like trying to get kids out the door and like just doing that story, like
Oh,
you could
absolutely.
just crush it. So anyway, so you used to do comedy like way back, or how long, or do you still do it, or?
I stopped essentially around when I became a parent, but I was going to U of M. I was studying engineering, like you do, and then I I started writing satire and I started doing stand up. And by the time I was like halfway through, I was headlining a couple shows a night or a week in Ann Arbor. And I got to like open for like DL Hughley and Lewis Black at Hill Auditorium.
Oh,
And so
nice.
I took all the engineering math classes and then just switched out and was like, I'm going to become a comedian and move to Los Angeles. And
As one does, yeah, yeah.
like you do. And then like, talking about like the people that are arrogant or like, we're gonna do the thing. I I had a writing partner at the time, and we had one of the writers for Shrek come in to do like movie pitches and stuff. And we're like, we're gonna write one that's so good that they want it. And so we wrote something about penguins. And so we wrote this pitch about penguins and we pitched it. And we weren't even really enrolled in the class. My friend was taking it on like survey or whatever that didn't
Yeah,
count for
yeah.
credit. And so we pitched it, and the guy's like, "Yeah, you should write that script." And we're like, "Okay." And so we wrote this penguin script, and like he was like, I got to go to his house when I was in LA. We were being hip pocketed by United Talent for this penguin script. And then like there were some places that we were trying to shop it to. And then do you remember when all those other movies about penguins came out? Like
Oh, like
we were like in the middle of our rewrite process, and we were like, yeah, we're gonna send it to like da da da. And then it was like, yeah, nobody wants your penguins
it was
anymore.
like Madagascar, Happy Feet,
Yeah, like that
like the
was that
penguins of
time.
Madagascar. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's not the best time to be shopping a penguin script because
no, no, no. And then so like that it was like a very like we should have struck where the iron was hot. Because we're like, oh, your act two is garbage. Do you want us to send it around town, or do you want to fix it? And we're like, we'll fix it. And then it was just like no.
and then they
And
didn't
then
want
I
to
was
send it
doing
around.
stand up for a long time. I just did like all the LA places like Comedy Store, um
Did you ever go
and
up with Rogan?
the Improv. No, I didn't go up with Rogan. There were like there was a show that was like you had to like submit a tape to get into,
Hmm.
called the New Faces Show at the Improv. And like I was on that, and I would come. I wasn't like a big name or anybody, but there were like names that would come there. It would be like Andy Samberg and like Natasha Leggero and a bunch of other people. And
Nice.
you would like go there and you would hope that they would let you come up. And like there was one time that like I got to go up two times in like a short period of time because I was like Comedy Central had some contests. It was like called the Laugh Riots contest, and I was like one of the LA finalists. So it was like, oh, you're good. Like we get to, but I was never like the like a super good like networker or anything. So I'd like go and I do my stuff, and then it would just be like, okay, well, I'm gonna go home. And it
Yeah.
was like doing stand up comedy is like a lot like high school, where it's just like you've got to like go to the parties and you got to like
You got to hang out with people and
yeah, like, and I was never like, oh, I'm gonna do. I'm like super great at that. And then some other friends and I had like a sketch comedy troupe, and it was like at the beginning of YouTube, we were always like like in the bottom of the top 100 for comedy videos before they just sort of algorithmically eliminated any normal people from being on it.
yep.
And so like so that was pretty fun. We At one point I got called for like one of the studios wanted to have a meeting with me, and I was like, I'm gonna make it. And they were like, they like sat me down. I was like, oh man, they're gonna want to know all this stuff and then like do a project with me. And it was like at the beginning of YouTube, and they were basically like, how do you use YouTube? And so like my meeting was them just like, that that the show Silicon Valley, where they just basically like brain mine the group.
Yeah, yeah.
Like that was me. Like it was just like yeah, YouTube is great, and they're like, this is how we will make money later without Paul. It was awesome.
So you just told them, you showed them how to use YouTube. You're like,
Yeah, it
over
was like,
here,
oh
you
yeah, well,
sign
this
in
stuff
and
you're trying to put on is a horrible idea because it's too long and stuff, and like, you want to do it succinct, and you want to like I don't even remember all the specifics, but it was like they were so like, it was like very boomery at the
Yeah.
time. And, I'm a boomer age now, but like at the time I was in my 20s and I was like, no, like Barbara, what you got to do is you can't put a 30-minute show on YouTube. And she's like, oh, yeah, I told my boss. And I was just like, but I didn't know. I was like, they're going to love me after this. And I'm just like, no. And so then I met my wife. We had a kid, so I couldn't be like doing stand up like, and I was working in TV too. Like I was doing like I was on like CSI New York and other shows, like just doing production work.
Yeah.
And I've heard you talk about production work and your Batman experience.
Oh, yeah.
It's very that. And so like, I couldn't be like going home at ridiculous o'clock and stuff. So I started just working in post. And I had a Twitter handle that I just started telling parent jokes on. And it was called Dadpression, which is weird because I like it got kind of like it was like on like all those like Yahoo funny parents or like,
Oh,
mommy
yeah.
blog. I was like really big on the mommy blog circuit. There was like, oh, this guy said something funny about his kid. And then like Bitcoin and stuff happened. And then I started just like, acting more like a Bitcoiner instead of just like, oh, here's a funny joke about my wife and wine. I was like, you know what I hate about this economic system? And, and it was like a little bit like less like, oh,
Yeah.
everybody's retweeting me.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny because because I came in, I didn't create a Twitter account until Bitcoin. And, um, and so, yeah, so like, until I like really got into, well, actually, I was into it for about a year or so. And then I created the account. Like I had my anonymous account. But yeah, it was like, you know, mainly people followed me, which I mean, I don't have a huge following, but they followed me for Bitcoin, because like we were all plebs. And
Mm-hmm.
then like, and not that I mean, obviously I'm still like a pure, like, Bitcoin maxi, but I'm like, I have like other interests in life too, So like,
Right.
I like tweet about, sports and stuff like that. And like, I'm sure like the, Bitcoin followers are like, what the hell? But then like, and then people start like following about like other stuff, and then so I'm a Steelers fan, obviously from Pittsburgh. And last week the Bengals bungled their way out of the Super Bowl by losing to the Chiefs in the way they did. And but I actually felt bad for how bad they were getting jobbed by the refs, and I tweeted the video and said like,
I saw that.
I was like, as a Steelers fan, I despise the Bengals, but like they, got like and that went like viral. Like I think it had like almost 1 million impressions or something, and and then I mean, there were like probably like 30 people I think that followed me from that, and I was like, the ones that are, I told my wife, the ones that are hardcore Bengals fans are gonna be sorely mistaken whenever like the Steelers start back up next year, because they're gonna be like, whoa, wait a minute, this guy seemed like he was an ally, um but anyways, yeah, it's interesting to like cross that over, and like, and you know, I think I think Bitcoiners are probably more like, because they don't, I haven't lost following, so like I'm sure they're just more like okay with like, okay, yeah, there's other things in life.
Yeah.
Whereas like, yeah, you do like dad jokes and mommy bloggers are following you, and then all of a sudden you're talking about like economic theory, and like they're probably like, what? I'm gonna, okay.
Yeah, it started out like it was like, and I knew that it was like, because I wasn't like, I'm gonna try to become Twitter famous. I was just like, I miss doing stand-up and I'm gonna write
Uh-huh.
dad jokes. And like it started out like, well, this is what I'll tell my son about money, derp derp, part of,
Yeah.
writing a character. And then I was just like, why do I care about like I'm not gonna it's not like I'm going to make my living from Twitter. Although one time I got some free beef jerky for
Well, hey, I mean,
about beef jerky. So that
yeah,
was pretty
you're
good.
basically you're an influencer then.
Yes.
Somebody gave you beef
And
jerky.
it was like super gross to to the idea of being an influencer is like super gross. Like
I
it's like
know. I know.
it's like somebody's just like, hey, we'll send you this thing, and then can you say this thing? And I was like, if you send me beef jerky, I'll eat it, and I'll post a picture if I like beef jerky.
Yeah.
But like, it's like those like the Bitcoin influencers where it's like you can tell it's like just like this crafted image where it's like, and they're taking other people's art and they're putting like their picture their little logos on it and stuff, and like,
Yep.
or they'll like there's certain ones, it's almost like wrestling where it's like, oh, this guy was like really like hardcore Bitcoiner, but now he's like into crypto and stuff. And it's just like some sort of like, oh no, Hulk Hogan joined the NWO and now we have to hate him
Yeah.
kind of thing. And it's really weird to me. But like to your point of like, I don't think a bunch of Bitcoiners are going to stop following me because I'm talking about other things. I feel like I've learned a lot of stuff. Everybody talks about just like they've learned so much through Bitcoin, and I feel like I'm just developing other interests because of Bitcoin.
Oh yeah.
Like today, I got a shortwave radio. Like I was like, I should have a shortwave radio in case there's Armageddon. So I
Yeah.
ordered that, and it came in the mail today. And
Well,
I
with
got
those
Bitcoin
balloons
magazines, and
flying over us, you might need it.
yeah, I think that the balloon thing, the Chinese balloon thing, is basically the same thing as the what is it the Bitcoin images that they're trying to put. I can't think of the name
The
of.
FUD, yeah, the
Yeah, it's just
Orion, whatever, yeah.
yeah, it's just like we got to do something about it. We hate it, and we have to make a knee jerk decision right now. Like I'm not sure how I feel about the images. I'm saying it like an idiot, but
Oh yeah, no,
like
I actually like I recorded during my lunch break today, and I say that like I work at like a like steel mill or something, but
yeah, you got
but
on the lunch pail that had the
yeah,
recorder
exactly. I'm
inside.
sitting on like the I beam, over the city, but yeah, I recorded and I talked about it a little bit, and I was like, I don't know what the hell this is, but like, so I was like, I probably sound like an idiot, um, but
Yeah, I
yeah,
think it's okay to think about it first before you just have a black and white.
oh yeah, and like there's so many. I mean, everybody has to have an opinion immediately,
Yeah,
and like, and everybody's like, I don't know. I'm so the clout chasing just kills me. I'm like, people are just like so desperate, and it's weird. Like you can tell who needs the Bitcoin Twitter engagement,
yeah,
and you can also tell who's too dependent on number go up. you
yeah,
know, and like so I'm just like I try to like thread that needle of like because I don't hate the fact that we have sponsor, but like I would only take sponsorship. Like I'd actually prefer like I have tonight I have Yingling, but I usually have Sam Adams. So I'm like if a beer wanted to sponsor me, I'd be all over that. But like but I to take on a sponsor, it's the uh Bitbox hardware wallet. Like it has to be something where I'm like I can sit there and basically say like get your coins off the exchange, please.
yeah.
Like
That's
this
never a
is a
bad
very
idea.
yeah, and like this is a very good product to use, but like where you get into trouble, and I think Peter McCormick does a really good job, and like and I don't, I mean, he's like a Bitcoin maxi, but people have a lot of problems with them over different things. And you do get into that like danger zone of like when you're just taking on like sponsors and you're trying to make
Mhm.
it like a media empire. Because I think Matt Odell like zinged him whenever he was on the show recently. And
Oh,
he said
I heard
something
that one.
like, oh, I got rid of my sponsors. And he was like, yeah, because they're all went bankrupt. Like, it's like, so yeah, the idea of being an influencer in Bitcoin is like I don't know, it's like so cringe to me, and like but we see a lot of it, unfortunately.
Oh, absolutely. Well, and the funny thing is, it's like the group of people that are probably the largest group of critical thinkers too. So it's like you're putting on the hat and doing the funny dance, and they're like, that's not even a real hat, and you're like, no, it is. Like, don't look behind the curtain.
Yeah,
And it's
yeah.
like Bitcoiners are like, that's not a real curtain either.
Bitcoiners are like the best bullshit detectors in the world, where they're just like they'll like absolutely rip people to shreds. Like I called so Luke Mikic can back me up on this, but I called it it was before the Bitcoin conference last year. I told Luke, I was like, Nick Carter is a shitcoiner. I was like, he's gonna go down. I can tell it. I was like, he thinks too highly of himself, blah, blah, blah. I could feel it. I could hear it in the way he was talking about stuff. I had that feeling. And we were sitting there, me and Luke shared a hotel room, and in our romantic getaway in Miami, my
Did they
wife
have
was
swan
teasing me about.
towels and stuff?
Yeah, well, actually, the funny thing it was the pen. When I was signing like the documents there, I looked and it said hetero friendly, and I was like, "What?" Because like that's not something you see. And the guy was like, "Oh, you didn't know this is like originally like mainly a gay hotel?" And I was like, "Oh," I was like, "I mean, that's fine." I was like, "By the way, if an Australian mate named Luke comes along, send him up to my room, please." Um,
He's
and
like, exactly.
yeah, he was like, "I got you, I got you." The wife's okay with it. I'm like, yeah, yeah, she no, like my wife just was like dying. She was like, "Oh my God, like you're." But anyways, but I told me and Luke were like sitting there. We had like YouTube on the TV, and we were watching some of the Bitcoin conference, and Nick was on there, and I was just sitting there. I was like, "Dude, I'm telling you, man." I was like, "He's got shitcoiner written all over him,"
Yeah.
and 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 then all of a sudden it comes out, and then you see their Bitcoin derangement syndrome, where he just like goes off the rails,
Yeah.
and like loses it, and like it's like I think it comes from the amount of effort that a shitcoiner has to like give to hide the fact that they're a shitcoiner. Because like you said, the Bitcoiners are going to call it immediately.
Yeah. And then it's like you're just pot committed, and then they just have to go. And it's a shame. He's written a lot of really great stuff.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
like,
he's done a lot of good stuff for like around the mining and energy
mhm.
and all that kind of stuff. But I mean, it was honestly once he had the stash, I was like, okay,
Yeah.
I like this is something's going on. Like this is my radar was already up, but then the stash threw it over the edge. And I told Steve Barber actually, I said when I told him that, I said, don't be offended. Steve from Upstream Data.
Yeah. Yeah.
I said, don't be offended. It's not stashes. I was like, if I could grow a mustache like yours, I'd be all over that because like Steve's got like the stash, like I was like, but it's like I don't know, there's just something about it where I was like, something's off here. But
Yeah,
anyway,
there's like this hill where it, like honestly, at first it seemed like it was like almost satire to me, and it was like, oh, I'm gonna,
yeah,
and then it's like, wait a second, like that's nobody's kidding anymore, and then you're like, oh my god, like this is
like I guess
nuts.
this is a thing now. Um, so okay, so so then what got you into Bitcoin, or when did you get into Bitcoin?
I was actually PAing on a show, and I was like, just I had a lot of downtime, and I was reading about, you know, it was like 2008 was like really horrible,
Yeah.
and when you're living in Los Angeles and you're making like minimum wage an hour, and then like every so often I would have a writing gig, which would be like it would pay for like 2 months of PAing, but like that's not something you know how that is. Like you
Oh
can't
yeah.
rely on that. And like so I was like, I tried to learn as much as I could about money and stocks and stuff. And so that's what I would do when I was like PAing. And then I started to find out about Bitcoin. And I like really early, I started to do like the math. I'm like, well, if this is gold, like this is going to be worth a lot of money. And it was total just like number go up. Like I
Yeah.
didn't understand like how money worked or what good properties of money were or anything like that. But it was just like, I was like pretty good at math. And then I was like, it was just really interesting to me because it was like a new wild thing. And it was like during Mount Gox. So like luckily I
Mhm.
didn't get Mount Gox or get
What
Mount
was that
Gox.
like 20? Was that 2013
I think it was like
or 2012?
I didn't end up getting any Bitcoin until like that's when I became aware of it. And I was like, I super wanted some and I didn't know how to get any. And I didn't want to send my credit card to a weird Japanese company. I finally bought some. I think I bought it on Circle like in 2016 or something like that.
Well,
Um,
yeah, I think it was like 2012 or 2013, roughly, that the Mount Gox thing happened. But get yourself a BitBox 02 hardware wallet. You're gonna want to get one. You're gonna want to get your coins off the exchange. I don't know if it's FUD or whatever, but I see a lot of people talking about the payment rails to the on and off payment rails, or the rails on and off of the exchanges, which might be in jeopardy, might be in trouble. So you might want to get a Bitbox O2 hardware wallet. If you've been on the fence about it for a while, it's really easy to use. It's really simple. Even a smooth brain pleb like me can use it. It's a touch screen, it's the size of a thumb drive, and you get your coins moved to a hardware wallet and they're off the exchange. And or it's also should be called a signing device. Um, but really you get your keys or your coins off the exchange, take care of your secure your private keys, and take care of your Bitcoin because it's the most valuable asset you can own. So get a Bitbox O2 hardware wallet from Shift Crypto. Go to shiftcrypto.ch/Bitcoin made simple and use the promo code Bitcoin made simple to get 5% off. Yeah, that's I wish I would have jumped in like yeah. Anyway, so you jumped in then or like you were
It was
paying
after
attention
Gox.
to
It
it.
was around 2016, and then like shortly after that, like the Bitfinex thing happened, so it dumped. So it was like, I was living in LA making like $10-15 an hour. So like I bought big for me then, but it
Yeah.
was not, you know. Um, and then, since then, just getting into sort of like the culture of everything. And, it's amazing how many books and things there are that like Bitcoiners like, you should read this book. And like if you've been in Bitcoin for a while, you're like, oh, they're always talking about this book. Like, and then you finally read it and you're like, oh, I should have read this book.
Yeah.
And
They were right.
yeah. And yeah, I just think that like it's really helped, like, it's helped me learn more about just other things in general, whether you're talking about like just how the economic system works, and then you start learning how the political system works. And it also just, I think about people too. Like this is kind of a ridiculous thing to say, but like I think we live in this world where like you can't disagree with people about things because otherwise it's like rude.
Yeah.
Like just political things. Like we just lived through like the last 2 years that we won't talk about in case you want to put the show on YouTube.
Hmm.
And like you just can't say things that are like blatantly true that are like put out in like official publications.
Yeah.
And so it's like we have this forced agreement because we live in a world of complete unsettled truth. And then Bitcoin settles truth like every 10 minutes. And I think that actually helps allow Bitcoiners to like get in arguments and fight with each other, because it's like there is like this base layer of truth. And then like you can debate other things around it because you've got this base layer of truth. Whereas like in like fiat world, it's like there's no such thing as truth. So it's like you can't acknowledge lack of truth. So you just have to be in agreement, polite, like ignore the elephant in the room. I mean, even just having a normie job, like you're like, oh my God, this department, these people, they don't do a thing well. And it's like, no, it's like just don't worry about it. Like we do our best, and it's just have good intentions. And I think that's one of the big differences about Bitcoiners, because they have a rock to stand on. And so it's like it's okay to be like, no, like we can compare it to this thing, and like maybe there's a right or a wrong here. And I think that's one of the most attractive things about it to me, because I'm combative about things that I think are not true, and most people don't want to hear it.
In big, honestly, like you nailed it. Like that's honestly one of my favorite. Like that's one of my like favorite references right now. Like literally, I'm like, oh my God, that's a great way to put it. Is that we live in this world of no truth, and but like Bitcoin every 10 minutes settles on truth, and I've thought a lot about that. Where like you know like so many of the problems, it's the trope of like, fix the money, fix the world, blah, blah, blah. But like when you look at so many of the problems, um, and you back it up with the fact that like their money means nothing. Like your money is a number that's typed in at the Federal Reserve and like added to a balance sheet. It's completely made out of thin air. And whether people even realize that or not, they don't realize it, but they feel the effects of it because of inflation and everything going up around them and this rat race that they're stuck in. So when your life, something that I mean, money, unfortunately, is so much a part of your life, when that has no meaning and that means nothing. So there's it like the base layer of how you make so many of your decisions has no meaning. That leaves, I feel like so many people with just no meaning in life.
Yeah, it's
Mm.
it's absolutely true, and it also like makes problem solving so much worse. I mean, you watch a movie like Knives Out, or you read a Sherlock Holmes book, and like the big reveal at the end is always like, okay, what do we know? We know this guy went in this room. We know this lady drank this thing that's poison in India, but not poison here. And like they just go through the list, and it's like, okay, we can all agree on this. And then you start building, something on not sand, and it's like, well, this is why the guy did it.
Hmm.
And whereas in this world, it's like we can't even decide like if there should be a budget for this in the government. It's not even like what's the budget or what should we budget for. It's like everything and nothing at the same time. And it's like you just can't solve any problems if you can't even define the problem or define like aspects of it. And yeah, so you're totally right. It's like, and it's just so mentally unhealthy. Like I have a friend that he's actually a mental health practitioner, and he sent me the Tom Woods article about your My Movies Plus not
Oh,
being able to
really?
advertise. I was like, oh, you should have him on your podcast, and like, but yeah, it's like just the mental health of not being able to have truth or not being able to address problems, because he's always talking about like, okay, like when I have somebody, I want him or her to come in and out. Like I don't want to just be bilking them forever. Like I want to address the problem and do things. But like you can't do that if you don't have any sort of solid framework, because you're just on this thing that's moving at all times.
Hmm. Yeah, there's just no, like, there's no consensus in life. And really, honestly, in reality, there's never been. Um, and like all of a sudden, like Bitcoin is this thing that has consensus every 10 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's wild. And like that's why I think like that type of that element of Bitcoin is why I've like really stepped away from like the number of like what the price of Bitcoin is, because it's so fascinating once you realize like, oh, there, like, you can't even argue anymore. Because like I think you and I are very similar. Like I would argue with people, and I was always, this sounds really arrogant, but I was right because I was willing to accept uncomfortable truths,
Mm-hmm.
and then formulate my opinion around fact, and then go from there. Whereas like people just wanted to get behind their view. And so like, it was very frustrating for me because it's like, I'd be arguing with people and I'd be like, I don't like when I used to debate people, which I stopped, but like I used to
Yeah.
debate friends and people that I loosely knew, or at the bar, stuff like that, like talking to people. And I would be like, I'd get to the point where like, I don't know what to tell you, and this is gonna make you really mad, but I just know you're wrong.
And they're
And
like,
it's like,
well, I know you're wrong. And you
I
just,
was like,
yeah.
no, like I know that you are, like, you factually are incorrect. And so I think that frustration has always been there. And I think that's like the early adopters. And I say early adopters, like if you're listening to this, you are an early adopter because holy crap, we have a long way to
Yeah.
go. Um, I think we all come to it because we're just like so sick of the bullshit. Like, everybody is pushing like Joe Rogan. Oh, I want Joe Rogan to figure out Bitcoin and become a maxi. And it's like, it'll happen on its own time because like he's a truth seeker. He's just not seeking the truth about money right now, you know?
Yeah.
And like the moment he does that, then he realizes, oh, this is kind of tied into everything else. And that's what happens for everybody. So it's just, I don't know. I think there's something to that like we are such, like, it's this group of people that like to be right and know that they're right about Bitcoin. And they're just like, they don't even care if anybody, like, you're willing to sit there and have people be like, oh, like, look, it went down 80%. You're like, I don't care. Like,
Yeah. Well, because like Bitcoiners are like incredibly harsh critics of Bitcoin. Like the fact that people are so angry,
over
perhaps
the
rightfully
JPEGs.
so, about JPEGs that are not even actually on your node. There's just like my understanding of it is that like there's basically an outside system that refers to a particular Satoshi, and so it's like
Yeah, like
but that's okay. Like
yeah.
it's okay that people it's like a crazy pit fight to see whose ideas are the best, you know.
Yeah.
And there's
Yeah.
so many people that have never gotten to play in that world, and they're finally like, oh my god, other people. My dad has a really great story about being a kid, and he talks about he was like, yeah, like I would always do what my dad said, and my brother, you know, was like the rascal, and he didn't. And I was like, Dad, like, why do you always get mad at me when I tell you I'm not going to do it and I do it? But then Dave, he just says he'll do it and he never does it. And he goes, Dave makes me feel good. And I feel like so many people in the world are just like, oh, just Dave make me feel good. And then like Bitcoiners are like, no, but like you're wrong.
Yeah.
And it's nice to actually just talk about the true thing and then refine those ideas. And I mean, that's I think my favorite thing about being Bitcoin. So
Yeah. No, that's a really good point because people just want to be told, like they want to make they want to be like they want to feel good about something, you
yeah.
know. And like I think about it this way, like in the fiat world of like jobs where people have so many different managers, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and it's like this make me sound like really bad to like anybody that's a manager. I don't mean it this way, but like a lot of times where it's just like they just want to hear, they're like, "Hey, how's this going?" And if you could just turn around and be like, "Yeah, I got it," they'll be like, "Boom, dude, I got my job done today. I crushed it." You know, like I'm killing it.
Absolutely.
I'm killing it.
Well,
And then there's satisfaction there and knowing, and you feel better because somebody said, "Yeah, I'm working on it."
and then like I've worked at a few movie studios and like having our mentality, it's the opposite because you know that like it's like, okay, I want to do this thing. I know it's the smart thing to do, but I need to get this person to say yes in order to do it. And so you're like, how can I ask just to get the yes?
Yep.
And then you know you do, and it's like I spent all day getting someone to tell me that my idea that I wanted to do was the thing that we should do. And it's just so exhausting, I think.
Yeah. I mean, Hollywood is certainly not the not like the efficiency model for the world. Um like I'll never forget I was working on this one movie. Um I don't even know if I want to name it just so that I don't
Vagaries are fine.
yeah, I don't want to like call out, you know, because I learned some information that I wasn't supposed to be. I mean, I was like a lowly PA at this point. Let's just put it this way. I was a PA whose job was to like, you know, be a PA on set, but then I had to go and pick up the one producer at the hotel and drive him to set and then leave with him and take him back, which was great for me because you know how when you're a PA, like the
Oh
end of it,
yeah.
like they call like, okay, that's a wrap. And everyone else is like, cool, put the equipment away and we're done. And like as a PA, you're like, oh great, I only have like 4 more hours left where
Hmm.
I get to sit here and wait till everybody's done working and I clock everybody out and you know, button everything up. Um, so you know, it was a relief for me because as soon as they called a wrap on that show, I'd be like, "Hey, you ready to go?" And he'd be like, "Yep," and I'd get him
We're
in the car
done.
and we'd take off. But like anyway, so this is like the opposite of like a Bitcoiner mindset. Um, but I remember driving him back to the hotel one time, and he was just like, and he just started telling me about how pissed off he was about how the day ended because they were trying to get this one shot and he was sitting there like, dude, we can't, no, we can't get this shot. And the director's like, nah, I really need this shot. Um, and it was an insert of like, if people don't know, like an insert is like that close up, like whenever right now, like I have this beer can. So like in the movie, if I reach down and I grab that beer can, there's that quick little shot of my hand grabbing it real close, and that's an insert. So it's an insert of somebody picking something up, which really, do you need that? You never
You need to have a
need.
B team film that
Yeah,
actually. That's the
exactly.
smart way to do it.
The funny thing is, I've actually on smaller productions been that insert shot. Like I've played so many actors, like so many famous actors that I've like been a body double for where like, you know, you sit there, you think, oh, if I'm a body double or like a hand double, like I must be making like a ton of money. Meanwhile, I was like a PA making like $100 a day like sitting there like, hey, be Val Kilmer. Like, okay, like from the shoulder and like the back. Okay, yeah, I could do that. Um, but the anyways, yeah. So I'm driving him back, and he's like, you know that shot we had to do? And he's like, I guarantee you, it's not even in the movie. He's like, and because we did it, there was a union rule that we were doing French hours, which was like you had 12 hours shift, had to be hard out at 12 hours,
There's
or
like
you,
no lunch or something
yeah,
like
there's no
that.
lunch. It's like a rolling lunch. Like they have
Yeah,
food available, but
pass
like
the
there's no
plate kind of deal.
yeah, there's no specific like break. But it's nice because there's a hard 12 hours and you're done.
Hmm.
Um, and we went over that 12-hour period to get this insert shot, and it was 5 minutes over. And all this producer could talk about on the way back was he was like, that cost $48,000. He's like, that shot cost $48,000. He's like, an insert shot. And then, I mean, he just like literally 25-minute drive back to the hotel. That's all he talked about. He's like a $48,000 shot. He's like, Corey, I hope it makes the movie so that we know it was worth it, you know? And I was like, and then so then I watched the movie and it wasn't in there. Like, so it's like it's just such a fiat thing where you're like, oh my God, like, $48,000 for going 5 minutes over schedule. And like you could just grab the director and be like, no, we're not doing it. It's not happening.
And it's an ego thing too, because you have to like handle the director a certain way.
You have to have
Otherwise,
kid gloves with them and
yeah.
like make sure they're happy. Like, you know, that's the thing that I'm so glad, like, because I hated like people would be like, oh my God, be careful around like like celebrities and stuff. I was like, I mean, it's a human being. Like I don't, like what am I supposed to do? So the people I got along with the best. My wife always jokes about Rosie Rosario Dawson and I had like a really good relationship on a movie we worked on together because I didn't give a crap. I was a human being. She was a human being, and we just like shot the shit. And I think she appreciated that. So there's a handful of like people that really, really do appreciate that. But like, yeah, there are the ones that like, oh, I already said his name. So Val Kilmer, whenever like he showed up and I was wearing a Batman shirt, and I was like,
Oh
son of a
no.
bitch. And I wanted to be like, dude, I don't even really think of you as Batman. Like, yeah, like no offense, but like Michael Keaton and Christian Bale are Batman, not you. Um, and then he was like sitting there, and I was like, would you like a coffee? And he was like, yeah, that would be nice. Thank you. And I was like, all right, Dick. Like, I was like, what the hell? Like, I thought I'd be nice, but anyways, we're getting way off topic. Um, so you get into Bitcoin, and how does that change your view on Hollywood? Like, I mean, I'm kind of rambling about my thoughts on it, but like, you were in the Hollywood,
I
and
mean, yeah, like I went there because I was like, oh, I really like telling jokes. And like I was an okay screenwriter. And, like we should talk sometime about our silly screenwriter hacks because that would probably be fun to talk about too.
mm-hmm.
And so it was like I went out there going like, oh, if you can tell the best stories and the best jokes, like you win. And like I'm not even saying I was doing those things, but like it was very clear that that was not the case. And so like I'm like, oh, keep working harder and stuff. But like being in that sort of critical thinking mode. And then when COVID and stuff happened, my wife and I have been talking about moving from LA for a while. And like she's from California. And like it was like that place went nuts when that happened. And
Mm-hmm.
it was like a biblical flight to Michigan because that's where my family lives. And
Yeah.
like we lived with my parents for a year and we could work online. But like I would have these meetings with people on camera and it was just like they were living in a completely different world than me. And it was like I was like, oh, when this stuff happened, it was like actually following Bitcoin. Twitter was great for it because people were like, oh, we're going to try to figure this stuff out. And it was like, we think it's this. And then like normal person world was just like, screaming with their hair on fire and their hair turned into cats and stuff. And like you would like having temporarily moved to Michigan, which I bought a house and never went back. Like you would see your coworkers, and it was just like there was just like the fear in their eyes, and the like, they just were living on a different plane. And I was just like, do I want to contribute to this in any way? And I was just like, I don't want to even write stories that like these people are interested in. And that's actually how I met you, because I heard you talking on, I can't remember what podcast it was, and you were talking about like coming up with like stories that were basically like not just tripe. And I
Yeah.
was just like, oh my God, like this is a real person. And I was like, I like went and I got my little scripts and stuff. And I was like, look at stuff. Like, this is what I wanted to do, as opposed to like, playing some sort of a like, political game. And I mean, it was very clear that like the place that I was working at, like they were being political on like showing up on the lot. Like, I don't want to get too into it, but I was
Hmm.
like, why are they acting this way? And I was like, oh, because they were shooting when restaurants were closed, and they have to be friends with politicians, and da da da.
Mm.
And it's just like, I don't want to add to that. And it was just gross. So yeah, the whole Bitcoin thing, the whole COVID thing was just like, I don't want to like hope that someone gives me approval for stories, and it's the person that would be giving me that approval is somebody that I don't respect their point of view. And since leaving there, yeah, I have a friend that was like, he was there for like 40 years, and he moved to Poland. He was like, these people are too crazy. I'm moving to Poland. And he's like a director. Like he's, directing
Yeah.
commercials in Poland and stuff. And he's like, I can't get a meeting unless I'm X, Y, and Z. And I'll let you fill in what those things would probably be. And he was just like, it's nuts. And like this guy is like the most like, those people that are like, have you ever seen this movie? And they expect you to see like all movies at all times. And you're
Yeah.
like, no, they're like, sorry, I've got a wife. And they're like,
Yeah.
why didn't you see this movie? And like, even he was just like, I'm done with this. And yeah, it's unfortunate.
It's really sad because I had not been back to California since pre-COVID. So like 2019, I guess. And then like I was always out there in November for AFM, and then I'd go out there for, I mean, probably at the like in the heyday, pre-COVID, like I was probably going there 4 times a year, like, and um and it just I was so curious as to see what it was going to be like. It was shocking to me in November when I got there that it was pretty lax with the COVID restrictions, like, but I think they've ramped up since then. Um, but like I mean, homelessness has been a problem there for a very long time. And, like I used to, I mean, it's like true, but like also a joke. But I used to always say like the Santa Monica beach like
Mhm.
smells like piss,
Yeah.
but it like actually does. Like,
Yeah, it does.
there's a very big difference between sitting in the beach in Santa Monica and sitting like it looks, if you see images of it, you're like, oh, that looks beautiful. But it's very different from sitting on any other beach because of the smells and and it's sad. But it got worse. It got so much worse that like I was texting my wife while I was there. I was like, we like probably shouldn't bring the kids. Like,
No.
it's pretty bad right now. And and like we're not like like sheltering our kids from like anything. Like if anything, when we try to like teach them to, like help people that need help. And like
Hmm.
um I mean, one thing my dad like did for me was like, the example of we would go to like when we would go to any Pittsburgh sporting event, we'd go into like a Wendy's and get like 10 junior bacon cheeseburgers, and then like on the way there just hand them to the homeless people that we saw. And it was like, so like we're passing that on to our kids. But I was telling my wife, I said, the stuff I'm seeing here, like this is like violent.
Yeah.
It's not homelessness that's a problem that people need to take care of. Like there's violent things that I'm like literally walking across the street to get to the other side to avoid that like confrontation. Like not a confrontation with me, but like I was like watching like fights happen, and I was like, this is a problem. Like this is really bad.
Yeah. we had our apartment for a year while we were just, my parents are retired teachers. So it was like, this is a good place to do
Yeah.
online school. And so we came and we dumped out our apartment in 5 days. And that's when you really learn about your spouse, by the way. Because like when your wife is just hucking stuff across the street that's half her body weight, because you have
Yeah.
to get in the car the next day, you're like, that's when I married a good one,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. No, you
Um,
and so you guys like bailed on it. Like you just like
Yeah, and in the 1 year between that, like we lived across from Sony in Culver City, and
oh
like
man, nice.
which was like gorgeous,
Yeah.
and like I mean, Culver City's still nice-ish, but like there was like tagging, and like I went to walk downtown, like a walk that I used to take all the time because I had a friend that we were gonna have like a drink, and I was just like, oh, this is the first time, I'm a large guy and I'm fine. But I was like, this is the first time I've ever thought about that here ever. And then like I'm still on like a couple message boards and stuff. And like I see like my rare plants got stolen. Somebody stole my kid's dog when he was walking my dog. Like there's just weird stuff that happens now that just never did before. And it's just like, it's unfortunate. And
Yeah. I
that's a
mean,
problem that you can't fix with handing out a few hamburgers. There needs to be a layer of truth that gets fixed first.
yeah. Yeah. And and it all comes back to the money because like if you have money that has actual value, then I think people like I think it would change the way people look at it like that really need it. You know what I mean? Um whereas the idea like the idea of saving for anyone that's like down on their luck or homeless or whatever is like it's an absurd thought,
Yeah.
like they're not saving, like they're trying to buy their next meal, they're working, hand to mouth like every day. And you know and so like to them it's like this worthless piece of paper, like I'm just trying to get it so I can get the thing that I need. um and if you I don't know, it's just I try not to get like super like, oh, this will fix everything because people get like pie in the sky, like, it's Bitcoin will fix everything and we're all gonna fart unicorn rainbows and like, everything's gonna be beautiful. Um, but I think it'll help people. Whereas like not like somebody that's just sitting there like, give me $1 so I can go buy a sandwich, but like, you have people down on their luck and they're playing like music and stuff. And actually, when I was at uh AFM in November, I was eating a corn dog in Santa Monica Beach, and there was this guy there, and he was like singing, and I felt really bad because he just was not very good. Um, but he was at least like doing it, and like
Yeah.
he had his like woman there with his baby, and I was like, hey, I mean, this guy's like going for it, and stuff like that. So at least try to help him out. But maybe in that scenario, he's able to like he's got his guitar case out. He's maybe he has enough money to save up. I don't know. I'm talking out my ass to be honest with you, but
I feel like too though. I mean, like there are so many people that are just like, well, whether I'm down and out or I see somebody is, well, somebody should really fix that. And that somebody is always like a centralized power. And
yeah,
it's
the
like, well, the
government
government should
should
really
take
fix
care of them.
that. And then it's like, well, the government can just print money out of nowhere to fix it. And they don't understand that like you're not actually making more stuff for people and more homes when you print the money. So it's like basically going like, hey, this vampire should suck the blood out of everyone in our society and use this blood to sprinkle some back on our society so that it solves the problems of the society. Like, and when they can't press that button anymore to like falsely create, it's not wealth, but the appearance of wealth, then people can stop thinking about how to solve problems through intermediaries and go like, oh, actually, I'm going to do something useful. Because it's really easy to be like, well, I don't really help anyone directly, but I campaign. And it's like,
Hmm.
well, how much value is there in telling other people to do things that you are not willing to do yourself? and there's not a lot of value in that, I don't think.
No, no, not at all. Yeah, it's just it's sad that uh that's the state of things right now. But I mean, I don't know. What do you think of like? I mean, do you think athletes are gonna start picking up like that was like a hot thing? Remember back whenever like during the bull market, whenever
Oh
like
yeah, especially
athletes
with
were
the crypto athletes too, which was
yeah,
like,
they're like, oh, they're gonna. Well, I guess I should ask you, were you before we get into the athlete part, have you ever shit coined?
I did.
I
And
joke that
like,
because we all did.
yeah, and I lost money on it. And like, at first it was like, it was weird because it was like I had some friends that we would have like a chat and we'd talk about like, I didn't, it was like maybe 5% shitcoin because I've always been like, I don't gamble, da 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 da. And I was smart enough to know that it was gambling. But
Hmm.
then like, I would see these people that I chatted with just veering more and more to not being like me, whether it was politically or solving problems or trying to, they're like, no, but like, look at this technology. And it's just some like janky website that's got GIFs on it, or
Yep.
like, I mean, the Andreas Antonopoulos talk about how like, if it's not completely decentralized, it's just a like lazy data. It's like a crappier database. Like
Yeah.
just that one concept could have saved so many people so much pain. And
And
yeah, so like
ironically, he's a shit coiner too, you know?
yeah, I know it's unfortunate, and I couldn't believe it. I was like, but you knew when you told me the thing.
Yeah.
It's like you were the chosen one.
Yeah.
But
You were meant to destroy the Sith, not join them.
exactly. But yeah, so I mean, everybody did, and like I think that it's okay to have done it and to like have learned like why was that a bad idea? And like people talk about it being bad for moral reasons and stuff, and I won't disagree with that, especially if you like know that you're just basically like trying to take money from a pool of dumb people, but or uninformed people is a better word to say because they're not necessarily dumb,
Yeah.
but like just to understand why you were wrong is like useful, I think, and yeah, we
Yeah,
all
no,
did it.
I agree. I mean, it's like almost like Bitcoiners are for the most part all like in AA, like, it's been, 5 years since I shitcoined, because I mean we all did it. Like we all did it, like I mean it's always like reassuring to see that, like, because there's this like purity test. I feel like the Bitcoiners are like, you
Yeah,
have to be like all in and 100% believe that this is the thing no matter what, and never have like wavered, but like even like Daniel Prince, he was showing, he like texted Jesus Christ, I sound like such a boomer. He tweeted a picture out of like from a journal or like, his like, you know, something he like a notebook he was looking at from 5 years ago or whatever. And like he had written Ethereum in there. And he like, then like had crossed it out, and it was like, obviously that changed, and like I'm curious, the person that first ever mentioned Ethereum to me, I'd be curious. I think I forget when we talked about it, but like I'd be curious to see if he's still into all that, because the initial thing was he was like, it has more use cases, and I was like, sounds pretty cool, like
yeah, I
more
like
use
the idea
cases,
that
why
like
not?
it's like okay, so Bitcoin is a completely like it's like the invention of the printing press. It's a brand new world-altering technology. And then like you get into Bitcoin for a while and you're like, okay, so like what's the next one? Like as
Yeah,
if another 1,000 years had passed and like it was just like here's number two. And it's just the same thing, only with like faster block times or something like that. And it's just stupid. But
yeah,
everybody does it and you gotta learn. It's like you have to learn like your own sort of like it helps you like learn about your own hubris and like maybe where you're making mental errors too, I think. And that's okay.
oh, I mean it's helped me dramatically with like business. Like, uh, I look back on my pre-Bitcoin era when I was running a business, and I was like, oh my God, like I was like, I mean, as an entrepreneur, you're always hanging on by a thread, it's until you until you make it. But like back then, like I was like, what the hell was I doing? Like I was making terrible financial decisions. And like my the thing that kills me still is the Land Rover that I bought. I'm like, what the hell was I thinking? Like, like the car, the house we were living in at the time was not like was less than double the value of the car. Like what was I doing? You know? And like I justified it with like it's a business card. So when I pull up the meetings for movie investors, it's a business card. Like I let somebody that was somebody else's idea, and I let that like imprint on me and be like, oh yeah, it makes sense. Like I should spend a crap ton of money on that because that makes sense. And like so dumb, so dumb. Like I if I could go back, I mean, that's why like my computer that I'm using right now is actually the computer that I started my initial sales company on, my initial movie sales company. And this thing is 8, almost 9 years old. And you
Okay.
know, I probably would have changed it around the time I got into Bitcoin. Then I got into Bitcoin and I'm like, why would I buy another computer? Like I
This
just
could be
buy
like a $200,000 computer eventually.
Yeah, exactly. I just buy Bitcoin with it, and then I mean, I get worried now too because I'm like, how far up can it go in my lifetime at this point? Like, I mean, there's people that are like, my buddy Luke, he'll say like it's gonna be $65 million a coin by 2030, and mathematically based on the how many Bitcoin there are and the value of everything in the world, I
Yeah.
totally get that.
Yeah. 21 million over infinity.
But is that going to happen in my lifetime? I don't know. I
I
feel
mean,
like we're so much further off.
we'll be living in Thunderdome if that happens, because in that short of a time, people figuring it out and getting on board can't be done in an organized manner. I mean, I love that chart. That's like the Weimar Republic, like the mark versus gold.
Oh
And
yeah.
it's like a 5 year chart. And like sometimes gold spikes down. And you're like, you're in the Weimar Republic, like gold. But it's like, like people, with emotions and like, it's like everybody's got kind of a shitcoin mentality when it comes to like capturing some paper value. And like there's also the fact that people got to eat, so like it's not necessarily you're dumb to cash out if other irrational people are doing that. So
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, yeah, like people that want it to be like the hyper Bitcoinization. I'm like, do you know what kind of world that would be if that happened? Like, like if Bitcoin went to $65 million by 2030, this is that like you might as well let the North and South Pole flip on their heads.
yeah.
Like it's going to be a disaster. It's going to be a mess.
Yeah. I
Yeah,
mean, and do you really want to be rich in like a squalor world of human misery? You know what I
yeah,
mean?
yeah.
Like,
It's like you go to like Ready Player One world where
yeah,
like everybody's living on stacked like trailers, and it's like okay, like so you're like the super trillionaire of that era. Like what does that do? You know,
yeah. My kid's not safe, so how rich am I really? Like,
exactly. Um, so you mentioned that, and I'll wrap up here soon because it's getting late.
yeah,
Uh,
I got the kids bouncing off the walls in there. It's pretty great.
is he still awake?
Oh yeah. My wife went to bed. She's like, "Oh yeah, you can go see if he's asleep." I'm like, "He's not gonna be asleep."
He doesn't sleep. They
No.
don't sleep.
What were you gonna say? Sorry for cutting you off.
Oh no, no, no. I was just gonna say, I actually forget what I was gonna say, so maybe it wasn't that important. Um, no, actually, I was gonna ask about, um, like what you think. How do you think Bitcoin will change the movie industry, if at all, since you have that background?
I think that's a really great question. I mean, I've heard you talk about trying to eventually have there be a model that's a not, I don't know if you said a decentralized platform for servicing movies, but like basically everything is so hyper centralized. And it's gotten a lot worse since even I started to be in it, because you've basically got like these high end super tentpole movies that are just basically spin-offs of the Avengers. Or you can do stuff that's like really low end that you're doing pre-sales, so it's like genre horror or
Mm.
something like that. And frankly, I'm not a horror person, but like like some of that genre horror stuff is some of the most creative stuff because it's the only chance somebody's got because nobody's going to be given keys to a $500 million franchise. So I think that first of all, it's going to make it so that like you can't just like it'll stop that bifurcation. I think it'll allow people to distribute things on their own and build. It might take 10 years to for a producer to become a producer that can make a bigger movie, but like they'll be able to like just not have it fiat frittered away. And I think it'll help distribution and stuff too, especially with like Lightning Network and stuff like that. Because
Yeah.
right now you're only getting stuff if you're just renting it through Amazon or watching it on Netflix. And like there's going to be, I mean, your business I think is a good example of there being other ways for people to produce content and exhibit it, and we just basically need more of you and whatever the next generation of that is too. And then the storytellers will come because like I'm not sick of writing stories, but I'm sick of just having to write something that I don't believe in. So you
Hmm.
know
Yeah.
it'll be better, but it'll just take time, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree. I mean, we're slowly working our way there, and I tell people all the time, I'm like, it's this weird. If we were in a position where like we, because we're cash flow positive, which is a good thing, but we're not like backed by big investors, so it's like you know it's a hustle, with like there's
Mm-hmm.
no, you know like our team is so slim, and but oh my god, like I would just, I would love to be able to get to that point where we really, flip it on its head and go to the next level. But it'll happen eventually. The podcast, I always feel bad. I'm like, oh, it gets behind, but I'm like dying, like just working nonstop and trying to make it all work because it's like I have to think about the big picture ideas, and then I also have to be like, oh my God, we need to make sure that we sell enough, like
Yeah.
we need enough sales to, keep the lights on. And yeah, it's a absolute rat race. And people that have never been in that, like it's hard. Like,
Yeah, the money is just stupid. Like it's you know
I mean, like, Netflix and everything, it's like we can't necessarily compete with them right now because
no, and nor should you try. I mean,
Mhm.
they were taking out billions of dollars in bonds and then just
Yep.
rolling them forward because it's like the debt's going to devalue and then we're going to hold all this IP forever. And we figure that, on a long enough timeline, like it's a good bet. And I mean, with interest rates going up and stuff, that's actually, I think their stock's been doing okay. But I mean, that's not great for that plan.
Yeah.
Um, but ultimately, if their re-rolling is better than inflation, they're still ahead of you until the money gets fixed. Like they have a strategic advantage of you until the money gets fixed. But like it will at some point.
Yep. Yeah, and I mean, me, like I knew on the inside, but I was like, people don't understand they're in so much debt
Yeah.
because the way that they pay for everything is like, hey, we pay 20% now, and like the remaining, like 80% will pay out quarterly over a 3-year period. So they're just kicking the can down the road. So like when they spent $16 billion on content, they really in cash spent, 3.2 billion, but now they have 12.8 billion in
Mhm.
liabilities, and that's just for this year. And then next year they add more liabilities and they add more liabilities, and
Mhm.
like what happens. I mean, that's why they're switching to AVOD, because they have to boost revenue.
Yeah. And my understanding from a few years ago, I don't know if this is current, was they had to overpay people like artists and stuff because you don't get the downstream revenue because your movie's not going to be in the theater, it's not going to be rentals, da 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 da. So like if I'm going to give my movie to you, I need to make it all now as opposed to like waiting for my residuals to come in. So like
Yep.
that movie they make is like double cost, fake numbers obviously, but yeah.
Yeah, it sucks because like I think it sucks for the artist. I mean, that's why we pay like on a royalty basis still. We pay like, you know, however much people watch it, the more they watch it, the more you get paid. And Um, and so they I think yeah, like I always felt bad. Like, you see Adam Sandler, like it was great. He got like a big deal to do like five
Mhm.
movies for them for like $200 million or something. Um, and from that he had to use it to like make a budget to make those movies and whatnot, and pay people out of them. But like none of those actors are getting royalties on them.
No.
It's a Netflix original. You're not getting crap. So, um, yeah, I mean we're even trying to like one of the things we're trying to work in is to allow people who have their content on our site to create merch for their like with their content branded on it, like
That's a cool idea because then you just essentially become a platform. I mean, that like people are giving their life energy in your direction and they're getting something out of it.
yeah, yeah, as long as I always feel bad like making any money off of stuff like that, but then when people are like, it is a business, like you gotta, you know,
Yeah. Have you
gotta
messed
make.
around with any like QR code stuff or anything? I've seen some of that too, where you can use QR code. There's embedded QR code. I mean, obviously this would have to be in some higher end stuff because the cost to do it in post because you
Hmm.
need the clean cut and the QR cut probably. But like I've seen some stuff where it's like call to action QR codes and stuff like that too, and I could see that becoming a bigger deal, especially when like then bringing it to the Bitcoin discussion, like, oh, this thing is a QR code and I can just buy it with Lightning right now. But
Uh-huh.
in fiat world, there's some demand for that too, I think, coming around the corner.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that like we've talked about it because we have some like live TV going right now, and we're talking with a couple people about doing like some different live programming, and having like a QR code like overlay where it could link to products and stuff like that. I think would be pretty sweet. And yeah, we're trying to find a way to like make it as interactive as possible, um but like keep the power with the filmmakers, because I mean you probably get this as much as I do, but like the independent filmmakers are just screwed.
Oh, absolutely. And people want to do that work too. Like you would see I would see projects when I was on network shows and it was like this person makes this money for a network show, you know, running a camera or directing or doing this. But then it's like the friend project and they do it on the weekend for free or for
Hmm.
whatever the minimum the guild lets them do it for. And it's like it's because it's for the cause. So like if you can give people the freedom to do stuff and they feel like they're doing it in a non-evil place, like there's a talent audience for contributing to that, but it just needs to have that saturation point where like people are like, oh, this is a valid place to do it.
Hmm. Oh, so before I let you go, what is the what's the biggest show you worked on?
The biggest show I worked on CSI New York, just production.
Okay. And then what did you write for? Because I guess we haven't really covered that too much, but
I wrote the funniest thing that I wrote was I wrote a bunch of animation stuff that I got hired out to do that was like script cleanup and like there's one I think it's called like Monster Island. It was on Netflix. I don't necessarily suggest to watch it. I
Mhm.
wrote they had me they had locked animation and they were like I want to change all of Act 2 but all the animation is locked and they were like also we want the characters to have like we want characterization because we don't really have that now and we don't really like our story so like I did like
You had to
it
like
went from like
shoehorn it in.
yeah, it was like I had like 2 weekends to like shoehorn all this story in, which was great. And then I sold some treatments that are like not online, but like it was just like work for hire stuff, and that was pretty fun. And I pitched some shows to some of the larger studios and stuff like that. We had a Disney director that really liked us, and so we got to go around and do the thing. And I was on G4 like for stand-up comedy like one time,
Oh,
so
nice, nice.
but yeah, just a
What's
normal pleb though. Like I'm not as famous as somebody that's gonna, become a shit coiner after going to the Bitcoin conference and shaving up real good.
Yeah, getting all blonde, bleach blonde and everything, and
Yeah.
um, yeah, yeah. It's do you have any crazy encounter with a celebrity? And I think I've told that. Well, I don't know if I did this on the podcast, but uh, I had a time where uh, Val Kilmer walked in on me going to the bathroom.
Oh, that's
Um,
funny.
yeah. So do you have anything awkward like that that ever happened, or funny story, like
Uh,
memorable thing where you're like, oh, this is the dinner party story of like,
I had to give Jeffrey Tambor I had to take his temperature once because he was sick or whatever, and he didn't want to be on set. I don't want to put words into his mouth, but I just know that like all the directors and stuff had tried to cajole him out, and then they decided that I was the next person to go. And so he was actually under his temperature was under 98.6. So I convinced him that he was healthy and got him to go on set. And then the other one that's maybe more interesting, I was because in Hollywood everybody just does stuff hoping like everything on spec, hoping
yeah,
you'll do me a favor after I do you thousands of favors. And I was helping this woman. She toured colleges and stuff, and I was friends with her, and I was helping her write a set. I really think I wrote her whole college set because it was like we would go and like I would write some jokes, and then she would write some jokes for me, and then it suddenly turned into like 35-1. And I was like, oh, I got to stop doing this. And then one day she's like, hey, do you want to go to my friend's house? And I was like, no, but like I did. And we go through all the hills, and I'm like sick in the car. And it
yeah,
was like Alanis Morissette was having a party at her house, and that was so like I went from being at this coffee shop to like I got to dance with her. She was very nice, and there
yeah,
was like a lot of other. And then who was it? Andy Dick tried to hit on me at the party. Um, like when I was leaving, he's like, "Oh, I know you," and like he like did the whole hand thing and
yeah.
stuff. And luckily, he'd actually performed at U of M, and it had been like a horrible disaster. So it's like, "Oh yeah, I know you from that," and then that just like kind of scared him
He was
off.
like, oh, never mind, never mind.
Yeah,
You
but
know, it's I funny Andy Dick. The last thing like story I'll go with is so he actually went to. I'm from Monroeville, Pennsylvania, um, yeah, right outside of Pittsburgh, and Gateway High School. That's the school district I went to, and Andy Dick went there for I forget how many years. But I think it was on Howard Stern, and he talked about how like in the bathroom at Gateway is where he had his first gay experience. And I was like, wow, like my alma mater has just like we've made the big time. We're Andy
Ron
Dick's on.
Stern for Dick from
Yeah,
Dick. Yeah,
yeah, it was great, but yeah. Well, I'll let you go because it's late and you got to get your kid to bed. Your wife's gonna kill you in the morning whenever she sees he was up till midnight.
well, it's good
Um,
talking.
yeah, no, I appreciate it. We should do this again because it's just cool to hang out and have some dad talk and some beers and all that good stuff.
Absolutely. And if you ever compare notes on film stuff, let me know.
Awesome, awesome. Thanks, Paul. I really appreciate it, and thanks for coming on.
Cool. Thanks for having me. Talk to you later.
Yep. Thanks again, as always, to the BitBox02 hardware wallet from Shift Crypto, and thanks to Paul for coming on. I really appreciated the conversation, and I appreciate all of you that listen. And I will talk to you guys next time.